Thank you for joining us to learn about the building blocks for creating a data-driven culture. In this video, we will walk you through the 7 building blocks and key actions you can take to accomplish them.
So the building blocks, the 6 areas we're going to talk about really quickly before the demo: leadership, trust, commitment, metrics, data literacy, and training. These 6 things are areas that you just need to start knocking off to drive a data-driven culture in your organization. So number 1 is leadership. So embed data analytics into business strategy and digital transformation by creating a vision of a data-driven enterprise, quantifying and communicating business outcomes, and fostering business changes fueled by data. So the idea with the digital transformation, so when you think about digital transformation, you're talking about, oh, we're going to redo our website. We're going to, retheme our application. We're going to look more modern and new. But really, digital transformation has to do with a data-driven culture, and it needs to start at the top. There needs to be a vision. So you, being in this webinar today, being interested in this, you need to create a vision for what this looks like for your organization. It doesn't need to be the CEO, but the CEO needs to be 100% on board and with you on this journey, and then he needs to push it to the other members of your team, your management team, the executives, etc. Because without starting with this vision, without that leadership, you're not going to get the results that you expect. So everyone needs to shift their mindset, leaders first, and then you start working on everyone underneath you in your organization to really begin embracing data and alter the way everyone approaches decision making. So here's a few tips. Actively using data daily. What do we do at Infragistics? Reveal dashboards are always getting updated, either by individuals who are tracking specific metrics by the machine that are just auto-generated, on demand, etc. So, but looking at those dashboards daily is how we keep up on what's happening with the business. Now, when we think about sales, do we have to look at sales every day? No. But do we have to look at downloads, conversions? Are we running a campaign? How's the campaign performing? Yeah, we have to look at that data every day. We do a lot of work on SEO, and the product marketing manager who's in charge of that product for SEO, he needs to look every day. He needs to make sure that the tweaks that we made through growth hacking, through experimental decision making, are working. I'll make a point to ask for data prior to making decisions. That goes to, let's get rid of that gut feeling. Communicate through KPIs. You're going to see some of that today in Casey's demo, how you can use KPIs and Reveal to really drive that story. And then keep up on things. There's tons of training out there, and even to get started, we're going to talk about training later, but look at the week-long data science course on an online thing like Udemy or some of the other great online training areas, or YouTube channels. There's tons of stuff on YouTube. Microsoft has tons of data science, Google data science courses, but it really starts to give you some ways of thinking. And then display metrics digitally through the office. So, and at Infragistics, when we were in the office, of course, we're not right now, the marketing team has this huge screen, and that's where they're showing dashboards and metrics and all this other stuff. And it's right in their face. So they know what's going on all the time. And it really does. It shows like, hey, from the marketing VP down, they care about these numbers, and this is really what we're looking for. So trust. By 2020, 90% of corporate strategies will explicitly mention information as a critical enterprise asset and analytics as an essential competency. This is, all of these big analyst companies like Gartner, Forrester, you name it. They're doing research all the time on what does the C-level care about? Well, you know what the C-level cares about in the last several surveys? Well, before that, it was always user experience. So user experience is critical to our business success. Well, now it's about data literacy, data science. How do we use the data that we have? Everyone becomes a data company. So if you remember, like maybe 5 years ago, it became real popular to say everyone's a software company, right? UPS was a logistics company all of a sudden. Like, wait a minute, don't they just deliver my mail? Oh no, they're a logistics company. FedEx, well, they're a software company. The big banks, Bank of America, Deutsche Bank, they are software companies, and they also happen to do banking. But now everyone needs to be a data company, a data aware company. They need to have data science because they're collecting data, and that's how they're driving those decisions. So creating the single source of truth with a data strategy eliminates the he said, she said. This is so common. Like, no, I told you this wouldn't work. Well, wait a minute, based on what? Spend less time hunting for data, enable employees who really know the business and the data to instill trust in others that information is accurate. So there has to be data stewards, and you'll, through your own training and research, the concept of a data steward in a company when you're doing data science activities means, well, this person's sort of the go-to person. They are who kind of gives people information on where to go, what to look for, but they can always be trusted in the data that they're putting out. This could be the people in IT. It could be a power user in sales. At Infragistics, Casey serves a role in this as well because she is so in tune with where all the data is at in the organization. We always say, oh, well, she knows which widget or which dashboard or which chart will tell us the information that we need. Once you start doing this, you really start expanding these insights across departments, and it's amazing what happens. And then this also creates less work for your data administrator when managing all the data is in one location. So again, 10 years ago, what did every organization have to do 10 years ago, maybe 5 years ago? Create APIs. Let's make sure that all of this data that's in our back end is accessible through APIs. If you haven't done that yet, that's something you need to do to get on the path to a data-driven culture, because then that data is accessible to everyone in your organization. So commitment. So by 2022, more than half of major new business systems will incorporate continuous intelligence that uses real-time context data to improve decisions. If you haven't heard of a company called Snowflake yet, they're like the darling of everyone in the data space. And the reason is what Snowflake has done is created this massive cloud data warehouse, data lake, whatever the new term is. There's all these different levels of data in the cloud. But what they do is they do things in real time. So this real-time data gets fed to applications, to clients like Reveal, who are looking at data. So looking at this real-time data to make decisions in real time is becoming more prevalent. So you need to ensure analytics that you're getting tie back to those critical business efforts. That's what we talk about in the metrics that matter, because if you're looking at the wrong thing, it doesn't matter how real time your data is. Keep data at the forefront of employee coaching. Make sure team goals are always present for gauging team performance. This goes back to the big screen in marketing. This goes back to using KPIs and dashboards. This goes back to creating the vision. So like right now at Infragistics, we're going through our annual strategic planning. We have a rolling 3-year strategic plan. What do? We have goals based on teams on what we need to achieve for the next 3 years. Then those goals are made aware to everyone. And honestly, the goals are created by everyone too, but it's just sharing that information. So everyone knowing the goals, being transparent, always present, we know how we're doing as a team. And then investing in AI. I think AI is an area where a lot of companies may feel like they're a little bit behind, but only, from what we see, only the top, like the cream of the crop companies are really doing intense AI with their data because it's complex and you need specialized skills to do it. But AI kind of shows up in places, like it just shows up in Reveal. You get AI. And we're going to continue to push the limits of AI to ensure that we can deliver it to you in a simple way. But the idea is that if you're not doing AI now, don't feel like you're behind, but eventually your company will be investing in AI. Metrics that matter are critical. And everyone in the webinar today knows what I'm talking about, because you've probably had arguments with people in charge or your coworkers about what metric should we really be tracking. So this quote, trying to force people to conform their work to pre-established numerical goals tends to stifle innovation and creativity, valuable qualities in most settings. and it almost inevitably leads to evaluation of short-term goals over long-term purposes. This happens all the time. So so there's people think in different ways. Some people are very analytical, and once they start thinking about something, they're in that silo and they can't break out of it. Other people think like, oh, well, I'm going to think on the edges. I'm a little suspicious of this data or how we're tracking it, so I want to start looking at different ways that we might think of a metric that will help us get to a better result. So you can't stifle that. So you have to really ask why, and get to the right metrics that matter. So you need to choose the right KPIs, look at historical data to set realistic goals. So for example, if you guys are looking at your sales team and the sales manager says, we're going to grow 80% this year, but you're the software development manager, and you're like, yeah, well, we're not adding any new releases this year. How are we going to grow 80%? You know, so those are some of the things, like everyone has to be aligned. So at Infragistics, like, hey, we're going to ship there's a new technology from Microsoft called Blazor. We're shipping a Blazor product at the end of July. I'm working, or have been working, with the sales team for the last 4 months on what to expect from customers when this ships. I didn't say we're going to, make $30 million more in July because of Blazor, but I did say that this is an incremental technology from Microsoft that we're going to see a spike in interest, and then over the next maybe 3 to 4 quarters, we'll start seeing adoption, but over the next 2 to 4 years, we'll see real adoption. So just because we're doing something new doesn't mean you're going to see that instant result. You have to understand what you're doing, how you're delivering to the market, and what the market expects. Identify new technology needed for the organization to access and analyze data, and then assign data administrators, data stewards, for ensuring that accurate data and providing the proper access to the organization. So that's like, what are my connection strings to get to the Marketo data? How can I get into the Salesforce data to build a dashboard that links in my Google Analytics? What are the login credentials? Do I have access, etc.? Those are some of the things you have to think about. So when we talk about metrics that matter, this is a screenshot I grabbed off the internet. This is really great. There's this concept of the vanity metric, and vanity metrics are rampant in your organization. So if we just look at, like, for example, the third line on the bottom here, paid search metrics. How many times when you go, if you're in marketing, do you go and you talk to someone that wants to advertise, or you're going to use their ad service, and they're like, oh, we're going to give you 4 million impressions. Oh, well, great. Well, 4 million impressions of baseball fans when I'm trying to sell footballs doesn't help me. I need to have a certain number of leads. I need to know what that cost per lead is. And then I need to know how much it's going to cost me to acquire that customer. So I don't care about impressions, ad position, click-through rate. So vanity metric, click-through rate's the best. I've sitting in these meetings for years. Hey, what's our click-through rate on that email, that link? Oh, it's 0.07%. Oh, okay. What's the industry average? Well, I think it's like 1.2%. Oh, that seems pretty low. Oh, but that's what they tell us. Okay, well, how many leads did we get? Oh, we don't know. We can't track that. So that's the problem right there. You're basing decisions off of the wrong data or the wrong metrics. Social metrics, there's this whole concept in social of, tweets, like retweets. Oh man, I got like 4,000 retweets on this thing about Reveal. Okay, well, how many deals did we get out of that? That's the first thing the sales executive asks. Hey, we did this new campaign. Okay, how many deals? Well, we need to figure out how to track that. So ensuring you have the right metrics is important. There's a great book that Casey recommended to the team here called Measure What Matters. There's this concept of OKRs, objectives and key results. Google started this back 10, 15 years ago, and that's how they drive all of their metrics. I highly recommend this book. It is really, really good, and it'll make you think differently about how you're thinking of metrics for your organization. And of course, you'll just shake your head. You're like, yep, we do that, because that's what we did at Infragistics when we started looking at this really closely. So by 2023, data literacy will become an explicit and necessary driver of business value, demonstrated by its formal inclusion in over 80% of data analytics strategies and change management programs. So adjusting to working with data means changing the way we operate in our daily activities. So all of the areas in these 6 focus areas for creating a data-driven culture all drive to that. So you have to ensure employees understand what data means. Employees have to be able to read business charts and graphs. They have to know what an x-axis is, or a y-axis, or a time series, because these words you're going to be using in your organization. They have to know the difference between a pie chart and a bar chart. You have to know how to use visualizations with data. So I was in this meeting, I don't know how many years ago, but we're looking at this area chart. And an area chart, actually Casey will end up showing you one, but you know, it's so easy to obfuscate your data if you are using the wrong chart with, or using the wrong chart with your data. You're not telling the right story. So even though it looks pretty, so the person's like, well, it looks really good. Look at, well, no, this should actually be a column chart so we can actually see all of the data. Because once you start hiding data in a chart, no one knows what it's saying. Be able to draw correct conclusions from reading data and applying data visualizations. If you haven't watched our do's and don'ts webinar from 2 weeks ago, we talk about this ad nauseum for quite a while. So definitely check that out and be able to recognize when data is being used to mislead or when it promotes data bias. This is the biggest issue. We talked about this a lot in the last presentation 2 weeks ago, dashboards, do's and don'ts. But data bias is used everywhere, and you need to be able to immediately spot it when you guys start moving to a data-driven culture. Because trust me, when your sales executive is showing you 180% growth, but the CEO is presenting at the company meeting that you're down 20%, you're like, wait a minute, that doesn't add up. And then the sales guy isn't giving the whole information. So this stuff happens, and you need to be able to say, hey, let's not do that, because trust and transparency to our metrics is really what we're trying to do here with a data-driven culture. And then training. It's a great quote. Every beginner possesses a great potential to be an expert in his or her chosen field. And that's the whole point of training and lifelong learning. You cannot stop. So just because you went to that week-long data science class or the 2-year data science class at University of Michigan or something to get a certificate doesn't mean you know everything. You still have to keep learning, and then you need to pass that learning down to the folks that work for you, because that's how you get the culture spread across the organization. So training on how to get the data is just the beginning. How to turn the data into actionable insight is the real goal. So what tools do I have? Is data available? Does my team understand the visualizations? Do we hire a data scientist, or we're learning within? Can we do effective data storytelling? What we did at Infragistics is we have stakeholders in the organization. They did a lot of learning, some online, some in person. Of course, they're just motivated people, and they really help us promote this throughout the organization. So there's always go-to people for getting questions answered, and then they're promoting within the org how to do certain things. So this is critical to be successful in a data-driven culture. So then why don't we all have a data-driven culture? Confucius said, "He who conquers himself is the mightiest warrior." It's culture. It's all of the things we talked about today. But if you can't change your culture, you can't change yourself. You can't change the organization. So the 6 areas, let's put the word lack of in front of them. So lack of leadership, lack of trust, lack of commitment, lack of metrics that matter, lack of data literacy, and lack of training. This is what happens when one of these doesn't happen out of the 6, you won't achieve a data-driven organization.
Be sure to check out the next video in this series where we demo how Reveal can help you create a data-driven culture. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Reveal BI.